this, because this too is integral to the growing Russia investigations. I'm talking about the upcoming interviews involving key players in Donald Trump's orbit. Let's talk about all of this with my panel. Basil Smikle, he is the executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, CNN legal analyst Paige Pate, and CNN political commentator Alice Stewart. Good to see all of you. So upcoming interviews is what the terminology is of Donald Trump Jr., Paul Manafort, formerly the campaign manager of the Trump campaign, and even Jared Kushner, who is an advisor to the president right now. So Paige, help us understand the distinction now of these interviews on the Hill. These are not being called testimonies. Primarily, these are closed-door discussions.
Right.
What's the distinction?
Well, there are a lot of distinctions, but the most critical distinction is this is not testimony under oath. You are not.
It's not on record?
Well, it's a record to the extent somebody's going to take notes there. They are going to be asked questions by the senators. I suppose it's more of a discussion, really, than an interview, but no one is under oath. And if they're not under oath, then they can make false statements and cannot be charged with a crime, even if they're trying to mislead the senators. That's why I don't understand it. Now, the fact that it's not public is not nearly as important for purposes of an investigation than the fact that it's not under oath. And so by negotiating to get around a public hearing and not taking an oath, obviously their lawyers had something to do with that.
So Basil, it sounds like this is advantageous then for those, can we still call them witnesses? They would be witnesses in the growing investigation case because it allows them time to change their stories or at least get more information before they were to testify?
I absolutely agree. I think it is an opportunity for them to sort of get their story straight. But I want to be clear about something else. I don't know if a public hearing would illuminate a lot of the information that we, would add any illumination to what we already know. I think it's important for the purposes of transparency and accountability. I do want to see them brought before elected officials to talk about the role that they played in what seems to be some sort of shady business here. But I don't know if it's going to be particularly illuminating. I think they would use it mostly as a platform just to talk about the president, sort of protect the shield, Manafort potentially to sort of use it as a platform to engage the alt-right. I think all of this said, it's important for Democrats to just hammer home the narrative that a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of shady dealings behind the scenes, stuff that the Americans didn't vote for, and I think a lot of that is why the poll numbers are becoming worse and worse.
So Alice, what's the whole point of this then? If it's not on the record, what's the explanation behind why members on the Hill would agree to something like this kind of arrangement?
Well, for any information they can gather under any conditions is helpful moving forward. And keep in mind, we not only have the House and Senate probes underway, but certainly Robert Mueller is conducting his investigation. So the more information they get, the better we can get to a conclusion here. And I question Basil alluding to shady dealings. Look, there's a lot of things that we don't know, but I think it's really important not to jump to conclusions until we have the outcome of these investigations. It is good that they're coming forward. I personally think, at least at this stage of the game, it's more helpful to have these conversations and these interviews to be conducted in private, away from the spotlight, because it does tend to enable some members of the House and Senate to showboat a little bit, and that goes on both sides. That happens with Republicans and Democrats. But I think in terms of just getting to the bottom of this and getting more information, this is helpful. And from the Trump administration, who says there's nothing there and they haven't done anything untoward, this is a great first step to getting the information out there and putting this behind them and going about the business of executing their legislative agenda.
So again, these are going to be interviews, not under oath. Hopefully I didn't misspeak by talking about on the record or not, but just not under oath. So then, Paige, somewhere down the line, there are likely to be testimonies from these same players. Meantime, we understand reportedly that the president, the White House is looking into the power of the pardon and whether the president would be able to pardon family members, aides, potentially even himself. But is that, cart before the horse? Because if we're talking about no charges thus far, can you preemptively pardon before there are actually there are any charges, or if there are any proven offenses or offenses that are being further investigated.
Well, the Constitution doesn't provide a lot of detail about it, but it is clear that the Constitution grants the president very broad powers of the pardon. He can pardon anyone who works for him. He can pardon them even before formal criminal charges have been filed. At least that's what the Supreme Court said many, many years ago. But what is an unanswered question the Supreme Court has not had to address: can he pardon himself? And I think if you look back not just to the constitutional language, but what the framers were saying at the time the Constitution was adopted, that he cannot do that. I don't think that power is in the Constitution where Donald Trump can pardon himself either before being charged or after being charged.
And if that were the case, that would undermine the power of Congress to potentially get the ball rolling on impeachment or anything like that.
Sure.
Right?
Now, they can still impeach him, even though, you know, Trump may argue, yes, I have the power to pardon myself. That doesn't prevent him from being impeached. But think about what it would do. It would give a president blanket immunity the whole time they're in office to commit any crime that they thought of, and then they could simply pardon themselves before they were ever charged. So I don't think the Constitutional Convention ever envisioned that happening that way.
All right. Thank you so much. Paige Pate, Basil Smikle, Alice Stewart. Where does the time go? Just way too fast.